Even some of the oldest horror movies, spanning back to the 1930s, are still recognised by their name. Some of the oldest horror movies include Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy and King Kong. During the 1940s and the 1950s, the horror movie phase had died down. However, the 1960s saw many famous horror movies being produced. These include Psycho, The Phantom of the Opera and Rosemary's Baby. The 1970s continued to grow for the horror movie industry, especially in 1973 when The Exorcist was released, and it is still to this day classed as the best horror movie ever made. Other horror films made in the 1970s include Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Omen, Halloween and Dawn of the Dead. The 1980s was classed as the era of the child horror because many children were used in their horror films. Some of these movies include The Shining, Poltergeist and Nightmare on Elm Street. The first horror movie was made in France in 1886 and was called Le Manoir du Diable, which translates to The Manor of the Devil. As you can see, this trailer features in black and white with no sound at all. It is all set in one location and features the same people throughout. It doesn't tell a story, or maybe it is just hard to understand, but film trailers to this day are made to highlight the key plots of the story, which this one clearly doesn't. The trailer still lasts approximately 3.5 minutes, which is still the same as the trailers of today's era. However, it doesn't feature other forms and conventions of trailers, such as music, to draw attention to key points. Text isn't used at all to say when the film is being released or even the name of the film. The filming is all done in one location and looks as if it has been filmed on one handheld camera, which is obviously completely different to the horror film trailers of today, but this is mainly due to the advanced development in technology that we have to this day. The trailer doesn't have a clear starting point or a clear plot throughout, which is also very unlike the trailers of today. And even the ending does not have a definite finish to leave the audience on a cliffhanger, which also is used quite frequently in today's trailers. Moving forward by 45 years, the horror film world was exposed to a film still recognised today. Dracula was released in 1931 and screens a dramatic improvement in technology compared to Le Manoir du Diable, which was released in 1886. The trailer of Dracula still remains in black and white colour, however the forms and conventions of that specific trailer are very similar to the horror film trailers of today. The Dracula trailer features sound such as dialogue between characters and even a voiceover, which is a very common feature of film trailers of today. The camera used is much clearer and produces a much sharper picture than the trailer of Le Manoir du Diable. The filming plays much more importance in this trailer, and you can tell that by the many camera angles used. There is also editing used in this trailer, such as cuts used between scenes, and also the text that appears on the screen that has been put in as an after effect and tells the audience a little bit more information about the plot of the film. Almost 30 years after Dracula, Alfred Hitchcock produced Psycho, a film so iconic that is still remembered and watched today. The trailer to Psycho is still very similar to Dracula despite the differences of nearly 3 decades. However, the Psycho trailer features more conventions that are still used today, such as a voiceover at the start. Music and sound effects are also much more enhanced in the Psycho trailer, which really does leave the audience in suspense. The very first scene we're exposed to is a shower scene where all we can see is female hands accompanied by deathly screams. The camera cuts and we see a blacked out figure holding a knife. Straight away the audience can establish the genre of the film, and straight away it's apparent that a murder is taking place. This is clarified when we hear the voiceover of a man saying, "Here we have a quiet little motel which has now become the scene of a crime." Already the audience are aware of the plot, however they are left feeling curious with many more questions to be answered. The trailer continues with multiple scene cuts and dialogue. Although the plot is clear, there isn't too much information given away. Dawn of the Dead in 1978 shows a very different trailer to other horror films produced in that era. The trailer is about a minute long and features more of an advertisement than an actual trailer, in the way that at the start there is scrolling text which advertises the producer, George Romero. This isn't a conventional feature of a trailer. Nowadays we simply state produced by George Romero, and then the trailer continues. In this trailer we only see very limited footage, however we're exposed to enough to understand the storyline. During the footage that we do see, there is music and sound effects to make the audience feel the suspense. The trailer is also in colour, which is new to this era. Before they were usually in black and white. The 1980s were known as the era of child-related horror. This is because many horror films produced during the 80s had a child as their main character. Some of these films include The Shining, Child's Play, Nightmare on Elm Street and Poltergeist. The Shining is another highly iconic film that is still watched today, and the trailer of The Shining features many conventions that we still see in the trailers today. Potentially, this is because it is produced by Warner Brothers, who are today still one of the biggest production companies worldwide. The logo fades to black, and the first scene we're exposed to is a series of establishing shots which set the scene, accompanied by a voiceover. There is also a very quiet but dreary music playing in the background. We see many close-up of facial expressions, some of which convey fear and some of which can produce fear. Fast-paced scenes and enhanced sounds are used to cause suspense. The music is also very iconic in this trailer, as it's very important in setting the mood. Also, the trailer of The Shining, stereotypical items such as knives and paranormal figures are used. This is still similar to the stereotypical horror conventions that are used today. After over 20 years, Hostel was released in 2005. Inevitably, the trailer for Hostel features a big advance in technology. There is very little dialogue or speech throughout the trailer. Instead, much more text is used to tell the plot of the story, which is accompanied by very haunting music. The trailer doesn't feature much action. Instead, we just see short still clips and images which are brought in and out with a fade to black. Lighting is a key element within this trailer. It is very dark to maintain the theme of isolation. Also, unlike other trailers, the trailer is unusual in the sense that we see more text than we do actual footage. This leaves the audience feeling curious. At the end of the trailer, all we see and hear is Hostel, said in a very deep and husky voice, adding to the effect of the film. As you can see, the horror film genre has dramatically changed throughout the years. The introduction of new and improved technology has meant that horror films are now much more easier to make look real. There have been many changes throughout the years. Even changing to colour picture as opposed to black and white has been a major change in the film industry. For the horror genre in particular, the invention of more advanced editing software has benefited the production companies, as they can add after sound effects, they can produce voiceovers, and they can also enhance sounds to make the trailers scarier. So all in all, technology has played a massive part in the history of horror films. The trailer I'm going to show you now is the trailer of Sinister, which was produced in 2012. Funnily enough, conventions we have seen from very old trailers such as Psycho and The Shining still feature in trailers of today. The opening of the Sinister trailer features an establishing shot of a house in the dark with a very low-key lighting, accompanied by a voiceover of a news report explaining that there had been murders. Straight away, it is clear that this is a horror or thriller movie. We then see a series of short, fast-paced clips and pictures with a haunting music playing in the background. Next, text appears on the screen which simply says 9 months earlier, and the scenes go back in time and the story begins to be told. The story portrays a normal family, however throughout the trailer many supernatural events take place, which is a very stereotypical feature throughout many of other films such as Paranormal Activity and The Conjuring. The trailer tells a large amount of plot, however it does not give too much away. There is also a lot of text used throughout, which features short sentences which capture the audience's attention and leave them in suspense. The last scene in the trailer is a very quick zoom of a demon's face, which is a big shock and successfully manages to scare the audience, which is exactly what the audience are expecting. As you can see, movie trailers in the horror film genre have massively changed throughout the years, however many conventions have still stayed the same. Through the development of technology, film trailers have become much more advanced and therefore have the ability to scare the audience and leave them in suspense, which is exactly what the audience expects out of this type of film. Looking at how film trailers have changed and adapted throughout the years has made me realise how important some conventions are and also how they work well. This means I can incorporate my knowledge when producing my own film trailer.